You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
I'm Bryan Wolfmueller.
And I'm Pastor James Neuendorf.
What is the place of podcasts in Latin American culture? Do podcasts have a place in Lutheran mission in Latin America?
Today's episode of The Coffee Hour is underwritten in part by Concordia University Chicago. You can learn more about Concordia University Chicago by visiting cuchicago.edu.
Joining us today, the Reverend James Neuendorf. He is an LCMS missionary serving in Puerto Rico. Pastor Neuendorf, welcome to The Coffee Hour.
Thank you for having me.
I must say, this is fun. We get to connect with you while you're serving in Puerto Rico. Normally, when we chat, you're like here at the International Center for Reconnect, and we're sitting down in studio. Now we're talking with you in your studio space in Puerto Rico. I'm excited to get to talk about this today. Also joining us today, the Reverend Bryan Wolfmueller. He is pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church and Jesus Deaf Lutheran Church in Austin, Texas. Welcome back, Pastor Wolfmueller.
Thanks. Do you guys know it's my personal goal to try to throw you off whenever we're recording?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well done.
Love it. Thanks for having me back on.
We are always excited to talk with you, Pastor Wolfmueller. Thanks for spending the time with us today. And we're going to talk about some of the things that you get to do with other churches and mission work as well, particularly partnering with our missionaries serving in Latin America. There's an article in the recent issue of Lutherans Engage. You can find it at engage.lcms.org. You can find a great article there of what we're talking about today. Pastor Neuendorf, tell us about the work that you've been given, the Lord's work in Puerto Rico, and what you're given to do there.
Yeah, so I lead the missionary team there, a church planter, and we're trying to plant Lutheran churches all over the island of Puerto Rico. Our goal is a Lutheran church within a half hour of every Puerto Rican. And we've got 3 congregations planted so far. We have 2 more in the hopper that are getting ready to move forward as the pieces come together. We'll be starting with Bible studies and things like that. And a lot of our outreach right now is happening through the internet. So part of what we're going to be talking about today.
How long have you been serving on the field? You've been in Puerto Rico for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, this will be my 7th year in Puerto Rico, and we're coming up on 20 in Latin America.
Yeah, that is a good long time to be on the field and to understand the needs of the people around you. This is a very exciting thing, and to have this podcasting opportunity. And I hear Pastor Wolfmueller and your church, you're involved in this too. How are you and your congregation involved in this work in Puerto Rico?
Well, we're part of the FORO, which is the forum that the missionaries create on different fields of service, and it allows congregations to get connected not just to the missionaries, but to the missionary work. So it's great. We just had another pastor here at St. Paul Lutheran Church. Pastor Ross Davis was just down for the FORO a few weeks ago. We're talking about doing a men's retreat in the fall down there. That'll be great. And so it lets the congregation stay connected to the work that's happening in the mission field. I think a lot of it started in Latin America. If I understand the FORO model, it's extending all over the world. So I just heard about the new Israel FORO for the mission that's starting in Tel Aviv. It's so exciting. I mean, just really amazing. So we're so happy to be part of that and to stay connected to the work that's happening in Puerto Rico as a congregation here at St. Paul.
Pastor Neuendorf, you mentioned that you have served for 20 years in Latin America and now 7 in Puerto Rico. What's unique about the culture and life in Puerto Rico compared to other places you've served in Latin America?
Yeah, so Puerto Rico is a mix of really everything, and it ends up being its own unique thing. So we served previously in Panama and then the Dominican Republic. Both of them are Caribbean, so there's some things that are shared there already. But Puerto Rico really sits in this sort of paradoxical bridge between the United States and Latin America. The primary language here, of course, is Spanish. A lot of things about the culture are extremely Latin American, but everyone's a U.S. citizen and is conversant in kind of both cultures. And what comes out of it is something in between, but it's not in between in the sense that you would maybe expect where it's like half of one and half of the other. It ends up being its own unique, completely unique third culture. And we're just now starting to wrap our heads around it, I think.
Tell us some of the things you've learned about the needs of the people in Puerto Rico. That's a great goal to have a church within 30 minutes of every Puerto Rican. What are some of the things that went into knowing what that goal would be and what those needs are of the people surrounding those churches?
Yeah, so I would say that the primary need, both from a mercy perspective and just a general church planning perspective, is Puerto Ricans tend to be very lonely and very isolated. Despite there being a lot of churches on the island, a lot of Christian churches, predominantly Catholic, but also a lot of sort of Pentecostal churches. A lot of it is very disconnected from both the historic Christian faith and the comfort of the gospel. It ends up being sort of just a legalism or tradition. And so there's a lack of depth. There's a lack of the forgiveness of sins, right? Which is a very important thing, the most important thing you could say. But especially also that loneliness that comes, the isolation that comes, where you'll have a lot of times people who will discover Lutheranism or discover something about our theology, either from a study of history or a study of the scriptures. And we often find that they are the only one in a certain town or a certain place. And so they're looking for community. They're looking for other people who believe the same thing. And one of our strategies has been to be available. This is why we came up with this idea of the 30-minute radius, is we can cover the island with strategically placed churches so that as people are finding us and as people are finding Christ through the preaching of the word in all of these different ways that they can connect with us, that there's a local community that they can be gathered into as soon as possible. The internet is a great way to reach people, but it's not a way to have a church. You can't have the church online. You have to get together in a flesh and blood, Word and Sacrament community. And so we want those to be available to everyone where they live.
So tell us about the ways that you are looking to engage people so that they can be connected to Word and Sacrament ministry there on the island.
Yeah, so we do a lot of different outreach activities. We do locally. We do things like art workshops and think to just get people into the church. A lot of people invite their friends to things like that first. So we do kind of social types of outreach with that. But increasingly, we're using the internet, both through the podcast and we have a website, LCMSPuertoRico.org, where people are looking up theology. Interestingly, we are one of the top ranking, I think we're number 2 websites in Spanish for the Nicene Creed. That people who are searching for the Nicene Creed come to us because apparently nobody else published that on their website. But people who are investigating, looking into theology are finding us through these means. And our goal is then to get them connected as quickly as possible to a local pastor. So I receive an email. I'd say at this point, I get an email every week or every other week, maybe more like every other week, from someone who's interested, either from the podcast, which is just now beginning to happen, or from finding us online. And we forward them over to a pastor, depending on where they live, right? So we've got the pastors strategically placed, the missionaries, and they'll usually get together for a coffee. Here's the maybe mind-blowing part. I would say 9 out of 10, when we have one of these coffee meetings with somebody, it's a young man in his 20s, almost always. And the conversation goes for 5 to 6 hours. And we need to order more than one coffee or we'll get kicked out.
Clearly.
Definitely more than one coffee.
We had one guy recently, Pastor James Sharp, did the follow-up visit, and the guy showed up with a list of some like 50 plus questions. He had them all written out, and so it was like a theological exam all over again. And now that same young man is driving an hour and a half. He's in one of the Gap areas. He's driving an hour and a half to catechesis in the congregation at Mayaguez. So this is the way things are going right now, and it's exciting. We're growing in all of our congregations right now.
That is amazing. That is really exciting to have that kind of interest in theology. Pastor Wolfmueller, what is it about the work that Pastor Neuendorf and the missionaries in Puerto Rico, what is it about this that is so exciting for you to be involved in the FORO and to be supportive of this work?
It was great to see, and I don't think I saw it as clearly until I went down to visit James and the guys down there, that there's all these different front doors to the church. There's all these different ways in. And a lot of times on the mission field, we've tried to simplify or diminish or even reduce our theology to open the front door, but it's the theology that is the front door. Mm-hmm. This is how people are finding us. So there's other ways to find it's possible that you encounter the church because of an outreach effort that has to do with like the art or charity or some sort of community blessing or, food pantries or disaster relief. These are all mercy works are helpful. But when we lead with teaching, especially the media teaching, then the people who are coming to the church are those who are hungry for the word, and they're coming in some ways already pre-catechized. They already have this deep appetite for the theological stuff, and so it's a different kind of evangelism, which is really wonderful. It's marvelous to see.
We're talking with Pastor Neuendorf and Pastor Wolfmueller about the Lord's work in Puerto Rico, and particularly going to learn about a podcast that's launching in Puerto Rico as well. We'll continue the conversation in just a moment, right here on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
I'm Bryan Wolfmueller.
I'm James Neuendorf.
I'm Dr. Russell Dawn, president of Concordia University Chicago. I'm thrilled to announce the Prepared to Serve Church Professional Guarantee. Any new student in one of CUC's 6 church work programs will pay no more than $5,000 in annual tuition and required fees guaranteed. Prepared to Serve is a donor-funded initiative. Support future church work students by becoming a funding partner at cuchicago.edu/prepared to serve. Concordia University Chicago. With Christ at the center, we stand tall for the church.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
I'm Bryan Wolfmueller.
We're talking with Pastor James Neuendorf and Pastor Bryan Wolfmueller. Pastor Neuendorf serves as a missionary in Puerto Rico, and Pastor Wolfmueller serves St. Paul Lutheran Church and Jesus Staff Lutheran Church in Austin, Texas. Pastor Neuendorf, tell us about venturing into this world of podcasting. Sarah and I do that some of the time.
Just a bit.
Just occasionally.
Yeah.
But tell us how podcasting has a place in LCMS mission in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so this is really, we kind of got dragged in backwards a little bit. This is really a response to a couple of things happening in a row. One was that we were accidentally discovering the fruits of Pastor Wolfmueller here and other Lutheran podcasters who are young people who can speak English. Were coming across their videos in English and then looking for Lutheran church. And so we were kind of harvesting fruit that we had nothing to do with, which is, that's the way of the gospel. But we realized, man, we really need something in Spanish. And there's not a lot of this kind of material in Spanish of any denomination. Interestingly, one of the big media, internet media people that there was in Spanish was a Roman Catholic podcaster who converted to Lutheranism recently and joined our church here in Puerto Rico. And we're hoping to have an interview with him soon. We've actually been saving him for when we hit 500 subscribers. So we want to use the boost that we'll get from him with a larger group. So if you're listening to this, please come subscribe and help us get there. But it really, in Spanish, there wasn't a lot of material. And, that we used to have Lutheran Hour and things on the radio, but it became prohibitively expensive throughout Latin America to stay on the radio. And yet it's always been a part of mission in Latin America to be using media. I actually found out way back in the day, Lutheran Hour used to have the This Is the Life TV program dubbed in Spanish, and it was here in Puerto Rico. They were playing it in Puerto Rico, and a lot of the actors were Puerto Rican, or I guess for the voice acting, for the dubbing. But that's long ago. And so we kind of saw this opportunity to bring it back. And with the arrival of my colleague, Pastor Sergio Maita, who transferred over from the Dominican to Puerto Rico, it gave us a native Spanish speaker to be the host instead of me. And so we said, now's the time. And we're on episode 21 right now. So that's
great. That's
cooking along.
Good.
Yeah. Tell us more about the podcast. What are the things that you're finding people are interested in? What are the things you've been talking about? I want to know. And I want to go listen, but I'm not a native Spanish speaker, so I need to know from you.
Sure. So far we've been kind of trying to find our stride. So we've tried a bunch of different things. We've done interviews with the seminary professors. We've done a kind of open forum conversation about sermon texts. We tried a lot of things. So far, based on the YouTube statistics, most of the most interesting episodes have been on 2 things as far as the shares and following. Hymns. Our most popular episode ever was an interview with Roberto Weber, who's one of our pastors in the Dominican who translated a ton of the hymns. And we did an interview with him about the hymns that he translated, and it's head and shoulders far beyond the rest of our videos for views. And then secondly, the sacraments. So we did an interview with Professor Bustamante at the seminary there in the Caribbean about the Lord's Supper. We've done some conversation about the baptism. Those have been the most controversial, which has also maybe helped them to grow just among the general populace, right? We discovered that controversy really helps to grow. We're not sure what to do with this knowledge, but definitely things like infant baptism create a lot of interest. either because everybody wants to come and attack it, or they at least want to learn more about it. We also have a series that we're doing that's been effective, I think, so far, called Why I'm a Lutheran, Porque Soy Luterano, where we're doing interviews with people who joined the Lutheran Church. So a lot of our own church members, some people from the States as well that speak Spanish that tell their story. And then the hook that we're doing is we have actually got these because CPH, I don't think, wanted to print them anymore. And so they were selling them really cheap. And I bought 100 of them for $1 each. So we're giving the book away. So people who write us and are in Puerto Rico and they would like a copy of the book, we say, well, we'll have a meeting with you and we'll give you the book. And you can meet one of their pastors and you get the book for free. And we came up with this idea. It's a little fishing pole. And actually last week, we got our first bite on that. We had someone write us and ask for the book, university student, a young lady, actually. So we're looking forward to following up. We'll see where that goes. But so it's been mostly kind of interviews. We just started a series on the saints. So it's basically, the idea was to present Bible stories. So we're picking saints in order through the Bible. So we did Saint Adam and Saint Abel. And we just recorded Saint Noah. So we're kind of just working through the Bible stories in disguise.
So good. That's so good.
Pastor Neuendorf, what's your background? What's your experience with podcasting and media prior to your involvement with this podcast?
Yeah, so before I went to seminary, I was a communication specialist for Latin America. I studied journalism at Concordia in Ann Arbor. I had some background with audio and video before seminary. We did some documentaries and things like that for the Synod back then. We did a short film even. So this was something that we at least saw as achievable. We still had to learn a ton of things, but.
What have you been learning, especially from people like Pastor Wolfmueller, who also dabbles in a little bit of podcasting here and there? What have you been learning from this partnership?
Yeah, so Pastor Wolfmueller was able to come and spend a day with us at the studio here. We recorded some episodes together, and it was really helpful for both me and Pastor Sergio, primarily because he taught us that we could relax a little bit. We were both very nervous about getting started and messing things up. He said he messes things up all the time.
What? I can't ever remember making a mistake. There's this fear of being perfect that kind of stands in front of all the stuff. And in some ways, not only is the mistake like, okay, people forgive it, but in fact, I think it's good with new media where people they're like, oh, you said the wrong thing. Like all last week, I was talking about how it's the 1994th anniversary of the resurrection. And I was a year off because I did the math wrong. And that actually is kind of nice when you have to apologize for making a mistake. It's not only okay. I think we shouldn't make mistakes on purpose. This immediacy of the media helps people like grab onto the person who's talking. It's great.
That was something that he really helped us to get our heads around too, was by having a more relaxed environment. We started to think about the podcast in a different way, and that we're still trying to put this to words, but we realized that what we really want is for people to feel like they have a window into what it must be like to actually visit our church, which is to say that they're being invited into a conversation that really is happening in a flesh and blood way. And that this is almost like window shopping. Like if you think about, the 90s Christmas movie and you look through the window and you see inside all the toys and the happy family. But the idea that you should come to our church because this is what it's like here, is that we like each other. We talk about things like this all the time. We're talking about the Bible. We're having fun. We talk about serious things, but you should come and visit because ultimately our goal isn't that people listen to the podcast. I could care less if people actually listen to the podcast in the end. We want people to come to church, to come be part of the community of saints here. So thinking of it in terms of this should be people's introduction to what it's like to come and visit. And then, of course, when they visit, we shouldn't be dour and mean people either. But that it would be an introduction to the community that is the Lutheran Church.
Pastor Wolfmueller, tell us about your visit.
It was great. We went down there with the team, Pastor Davis, who I mentioned before, and a group of lay members at the congregation here, St. Paul Lutheran Church, mostly all Spanish speaking, which is really good. They were doing some cleanup stuff for the church. It was pretty good. They were all mostly doing manual labor, and I was driving around. We were speaking, and then we did some podcast interviews. And like, well, don't want to get your fingernails dirty there, Pastor Wolfmueller. I did catch one chicken. Yeah, that was great. So it was good. It was so good for the team to be there as well, for the congregation members to go and see the work that's being done. And I think this is really important, that there's this congregation to congregation connection as well, so that the members here are praying for all the members down there and vice versa. And we're lifting each other up in that way. So I got to do a little theological conference in San Juan and got to go spend the day in the studio in Maguez and work on the podcast there, and it was a lot of fun.
Pastor Wolfmueller, what did you learn about the work that's being done and things to bring back to your own congregation too?
Well, it's really good to see that the things that are happening in Puerto Rico and the Latin American countries, they're happening in Europe, happening in Africa, all these different countries, also happening in the United States. And that is that this appetite for theology around the world is growing, especially with young people, especially with young men. A ravishing appetite for that connection with the ancient confession of the church. And to see it there in Puerto Rico, to be in the midst of it here in Austin, Texas, and to know that it's happening all over the world is just a really profound encouragement. We hear all these, some places the church is shrinking, and we hear these dire predictions of losses and the church falling away. But there's so many signs of growth and optimism, and it's wonderful to see that the Lord is connecting these dots, is continuing to do what he promised, to call, gather, enlighten, and sanctify the whole Christian church on earth. And that was another just a great encouragement for me to see that happening in Puerto Rico.
Pastor Neuendorf, what do teams like Pastor Wolfmueller's church coming to visit, short-term teams like that, what difference do they make for the Lord's work in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, especially as members of the FORO, which I want to emphasize even more. When congregations enter into a partnership with us, it really makes possible the longer-term work. The mission team here is very committed. There's a lot of things that happen in the gaps when you're planting new churches. So take a congregation like the one I'm in Ponce. The pastor is the church musician and the secretary and the maintenance man and everything else. And as you're bringing new church members in, they start to pick up some of that. But there's still a ton of things that need doing that a team is able to help kind of amplify that. The same can happen when it comes to outreach activities. So we had a short-term team here from Concordia, Nebraska, and they helped us put on some hymn sing concerts to try to bring people. We found hymns are a tremendous outreach here. We've been doing hymn sings in parks and things like that. People are blown away by our hymns and having the ability to just have a bunch of really nice voices to sing the hymns. Actually, there's a really cool story. I know this isn't part of the plan here, but in the article, I saw in the article, there was a mention about a young lady who came to Pastor Wolfmueller's presentation. No one knew who she was. She came in, she sat in the back, and she left before it was over. So we thought, either she didn't like it or she couldn't stay for whatever reason, and we didn't have a way to follow up with her. We went to the March for Life in San Juan, in front of the Capitol recently, and we had the idea. We had a pretty good group from the Lutheran Church. We were one of the biggest groups there, and we had the idea, let's just sit on the stairs and sing a bunch of hymns. And so, people in our church love to sing the hymns. So we sit on the stairs and we sing the hymns, and a whole bunch of young people start coming over. And they're like, "What church are you? What is this? And where can I get these hymns? Where can I learn more about this?" And one of them was this young lady, the same one. And she came back and she said, "I had to leave early, but I've been telling everyone they need to come back." And we ran into her again, and it was through the singing of the hymns. And it's this, you never know how the Lord is using all of these different doors. I like what Pastor Wolfmueller said about the different doors into the church. One of our biggest problems on the mission field a lot of times is that we're invisible. People have no idea that we're even there. And this is one of the things that the podcast aims to help fix and the internet ministry aims to fix. But the amazing thing is, even when we're invisible, people somehow find us. We were renting the church in Bayamon when we first rented. We joked around that it was the Harry Potter church because the the photo on Google Maps didn't have a door. So the place that the church was, it was just on Google Maps. It was just a solid wall because they added the door later. So we told people, when you visit our church, you just have to believe with all your heart and just rush through the cement wall and you'll get in.
Platform 9 3/4.
There was a door, but it was a real problem that we're invisible. People couldn't find us. And all of these ways that the teams help us with this internet, this very interview helps us to be visible to people. And people are looking for what we have. People are starved for what we have, but they don't know that it's available and that it's available at an address near them. And that's what this is all about, helping them find it.
Absolutely. Now, foros have come up a few times. Pastor Neuendorf, if a person or a congregation is interested in foros, whether it's for Puerto Rico or somewhere else, where can they find more information about joining a foro?
Yeah, so on the Synod website, it is a little bit difficult to find. It's like our church was. But if you look, there's a section for foros, and you can find each individual mission. I also recommend just writing. If you're interested in a foro, I think the best way is write to the International Center directly or call, and they will make sure that you get connected to one. The Puerto Rico FORO is currently really looking for additional partners. We need more partners to expand the work. Like I said earlier, we have 2 church plants that are kind of waiting to happen. We have contacts that are wanting a church plant, but we don't quite have enough of the resources together to do it yet. And so if your congregation's considering it, we could use more partners here in Puerto Rico. And for that, you can just reach out to me directly. You can find me through the LCMS website as well.
And where can people find the podcast? We got to get your viewership up. So we'll put that in the show notes. Where can people find that?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have a link in the show notes. It's Cristo en el Centro, which you can search for in Google and in YouTube. You can also go on our LCMSPuertoRico.org website and then go over to podcast, even though the whole website's in Spanish, and that'll get you straight to it. We have a page for the podcast on there as well. And then, please subscribe even if you don't watch it, just to help us gain traction by having more subscribers.
Our guest today, the Reverend James Neuendorf. He's an LCMS missionary serving in Puerto Rico. Pastor Neuendorf, thanks for being our guest.
Gracias.
And the Reverend Bryan Wolfmueller, pastor of St. Paul Lutheran Church and Jesus Deaf Lutheran Church in Austin, Texas. Pastor Wolfmueller, thanks for being our guest.
De nada.
You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Pastor Wolfmueller.
I'm Pastor James.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.